Football recruiting truly never stops as it's junior day in Happy Valley this weekend. Now, there are some intriguing names that you need to know about, especially with Penn State's plans at running back and quarterback for the class of 2025.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Penn State fans? That is right. You are Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I am your host, Zach Seyko, and today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. You're going to download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. The expert when it comes to recruiting Penn State football, Dylan Callaghan-Croley from Happy Valley Insider, Penn State Rivals, joins us again. You can check him out, happyvalleyinsider.com, and you can follow Dylan keep up with his articles and his reporting, but also you can follow him on X, formerly known as Twitter. And if you're not already, become an everyday or subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest analysis truly around all Penn State sports, Penn State football, recruiting, men's basketball, wrestling, men's hockey. It is all right here on the show. Dylan, Junior Day is here. Recruiting never stops. I know there's the designated dead periods, right? But recruiting never truly stops in this case, as Junior Day is this weekend, set for January 20th, and Penn State has at least 40 confirmed players, but as we talked about before, this number could increase to possibly over 50, and there are a lot of names that are on this list to know. A couple that stand out to me, I would say one of them is Trent Wilson, that defensive end from the Maryland area, but also just given that they have Tyke Hayes committed and Keandre Barker at the running back spot, Alvin Henderson, who's one of the best running backs in this class of 2025. So a lot of these players have been offered by Penn State, but what are some of the other names that, aside from Henderson and Wilson, should Penn State fans be aware about at Junior Day this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we have about 40 confirmed guys, and I'm sure it's going to continue to grow over the next few days. But you mentioned some of those top guys on campus, some other guys that we'll be, watching a little closely, or definitely be interested in catching up with afterwards. Include tight end Luka Gilbert out of Ohio, 4-star tight end, top 15 tight end in the country, 6'7", 240, so really big tight end there out of Ohio in the 2025 recruiting class. Another tight end that we're watching closely, Andrew Olish out of Southern Lehigh in the Allentown area. He's a 3-star recruit, doesn't hold a Penn State offer yet, but this will be his, I think, 6th visit to Penn State since last year, or about last calendar year. And if that offer comes, I believe Penn State would be in the driver's seat right away for him in his recruitment. So we're going to be watching him closely anytime he's on campus. Offensive guard, 4-star out of New York, top-ranked prospect New York, Rowan Byrne. One of the top guards in the country. He'll be on campus again. That's big for the Nittany Lions, who are continuously looking to add or continuously looking for more offensive linemen on that board. I was going through it earlier today, actually, at what Phil Trautwein has been doing on the recruiting trail. And Penn State just this month, and I may not have gotten all of them even, but just this month, Penn State has offered, I think, 10 or 11 additional offensive linemen in the 2025 and 2026 recruiting classes. And 6 in the 2025 recruiting class alone. So they're definitely filling out that board, trying to figure out which ways they want to go. Byrne has obviously been a guy who's been on that board for quite some time now. You mentioned Trent Wilson. I'm going to come back to the linebackers in a second. Beyond the linebackers, safety Kanoa Winston is going to be back on campus. That's a big one. Over at Rivals, we have him future casted to the Nittany Lions. Cousin of current Penn State Nittany Lion, KJ Winston. So that's one that we're going to be watching closely going forward. Not on commitment watch, but somebody that we think could eventually be a Nittany Lion here in the future. And then in the 2026 recruiting class, they'll have Messiah Mickens, 2026 running back commit on campus, but also will be bringing in Cumberland Valley offensive tackle or offensive lineman Tyler Merrill, a top 100 prospect in the 2026 recruiting class, according to Rivals.
Okay.
He'll be back on campus. That's a big visit to watch out for. And then you got athlete Matt Sig out of Fort Cherry, who led Fort Cherry to the state championship game this season before falling to Stilton High Spire. He's been recruited as a safety. He'll be back on campus, so that's one to watch as well. There is plenty of guys we haven't talked about. If you want to know the full list, you can obviously head over to the Happy Valley Insider, PennState.Rivals.com. But going back to that linebacker position, that's what's really interesting this week for the 2025 recruiting class or cycle.
Yeah.
Penn State has, I think, 6 of their top linebacker targets on campus here this weekend. Kamar Archie, 4-star out of New Jersey. You mentioned Anthony Saka out of St. Joe's Prep in Philly, top 60 prospect in the country.
Legacy player. Yep.
Excuse me. Linebacker Elijah Melendez, out of Florida. He committed to Miami last month, but he is very high on Penn State. So we'll see if Penn State can claw their way back into this recruitment, top 100 prospect there. Virginia linebacker Brett Clatterball will be back on campus. Penn State is among his top 5 or 6. He announced last month. And then Marco Jones out of California, 4-star linebacker, Rivals 250 prospect, will be making his first trip to Penn State as well. So really a strong group of linebackers there for Penn State. We'll see if they turn up the pressure on that linebacker position, but also worth knowing that this will be their – oh, I forgot one. Alex Tash out of Great Latrobe,
Pennsylvania
4-star prospect, Rivals 250 member. We believe I actually think we have him future cast at the Penn State as well. So anytime he gets on campus now, we're going to be paying a pretty close attention to that as well. So out of those guys, I mean, like I said, your 6 top linebacker targets or 6 of your top 10 or so there. We'll see if they turn on pressure. But as I was going to say, their first opportunity for most of them to meet Tom Allen as Penn State's defense coordinator and linebackers coach now.
Well, that's the important part of it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to finish this segment with quarterback because it's a similar situation with Andy Kotelnicki, but you make an excellent point saying that Tom Allen is now the linebackers coach, and a lot of these players were originally recruited by Manny Diaz. So there's a chance here to rebuild that relationship with a new defensive coordinator. So let's flip that over to the offense because it's the exact same sentiment, and everybody loves quarterback talk. Everybody wants to know who's the next quarterback at Penn State because you're never satisfied with the current player. You got to talk about the backup quarterback is the most popular guy in town. How about the quarterback that's not even on campus that's being recruited? Drew Aller knows that story. But in 2025 and 2026, there are some intriguing prospects at the QB spot. Bekeem Kritza is expected to visit for this junior day, and he committed or was recruited originally by Mike Yursich. However, that article came out by Audrey Snyder in The Athletic saying, hey, Bekeem Kritza admitted that he kind of read the tea leaves that Mike Yursich might not be around. I thought that was such an interesting admission, but he's going to have the opportunity to at least get to know Andy Kotelnicki more, even though we still don't have a read as far as who's actually officially the quarterback's coach yet. Danny O'Brien's still on staff, but Kotelnicki coming in as just the offensive coordinator for now. I am really intrigued by that decision for the time being. And then I look to a player that's been talked about a lot out of Spring Ford, Matt Zollers. I wonder if he's going to be on campus this weekend. He's not currently listed, I don't think, but maybe you can confirm that otherwise. And then I got a follow from him. So shout out to Dante Carr. You followed me over on X, formerly known as Twitter. Dante Carr is a member of the class of 2026. So these 3 players, Dylan, I think that Bekeem Kritza is important because he was recruited by Yursich originally. We'll see how that relationship moves forward with Kotelnicki. And then I know Penn State wants to take 2 quarterbacks. So is Zollers in the picture? Is he just not able to make it this weekend? What do we make of that? And then you can never look too far in the future with a guy like Dante Carr.
Yeah, Zollers, I believe, will be on campus actually next weekend, Saturday, the 27th.
So just a conflict.
Yeah, there is a rule which I wouldn't call it an obscure rule, but there's a rule that if you have an athletic event on a certain day, you cannot
Okay.
go get on campus at a university that day. Zollers is a member of Springford's basketball team, I believe, and they have a contest on Saturday night, which would have already made obviously the junior day visit hard to begin with. But they have a game on Saturday, so I believe, is coming up now next weekend, the 27th.
Okay.
Yeah, he's in the picture obviously as that a potential second quarterback in this recruiting class for Penn State, joining Beckham Kritza. Malik Washington is still in that picture. We'll see how things develop with him.
That's true. He had them in their top 6.
Yep. We have not been able to confirm with him if he's going to make any junior day visits to Penn State. Dante Carr, 2026 quarterback out of Minersville, is going to be on campus. We'll see what type of quarterback Dante Carr eventually develops into. If he's where he falls on the board, does not have an offer yet. Still very much a guy in development. So we're going to sit back and watch that one.
Absolutely.
But he has been on campus multiple times, so he is a quarterback that the staff at least does like to a certain degree, obviously. So that's the quarterback updates right now.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Malik Washington, because that's actually my favorite quarterback in the class of 2025 as far as who Penn State is targeting. I know that Bryce Underwood just committed to LSU, so I can sit back and say who might be a better prospect right now on the list. But if we're talking realistic options for Penn State to land a commitment from, I would personally, it's no disrespect to Beckham Kritza, but I would like to see a quarterback duo of Malik Washington and Matt Zollers. I think that's just the best case scenario for Penn State, but you should never complain that Beckham Kritza, for where he is out in Colorado, committed to Penn State as early as he did. So if they can couple him with a Washington or a Zollers, preferably Washington, that's just my honest take on it, on which my quarterback big board for 2025.
Yeah, no, and that's totally understandable. Both, Zollers and Washington are both very high-level prospects and have a chance to be really good quarterbacks next level. Yep. But yeah, Kritza, there is some mechanical things that have to be worked out with, and he may not be as polished of a quarterback as Washington. I think Zollers is a little bit not on the raw side, but I'd say Washington's probably the most. I think Washington is the most polished quarterback of the three, but Kritza may have some of the best arm strength in the entire recruiting class.
It's true.
Or recruiting cycle nationally. So definitely they're going to have a good quarterback duo, no matter if it's Kritza and Zollers, Kritza and Washington, or if it eventually ends up being a Washington, Zollers, whoever it ends up being, it's going to be a pretty good quarterback duo.
And as you mentioned with Kritza's talent, there is a reason that Penn State offered him and took a commitment from him that early in this recruiting cycle. Now, junior day is important because Penn State, you said there's no commitment watch for any of these prospects, but we're going to get an overview from you just how important junior day is for Penn State football recruiting. That's coming up next after this break. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, the official sports book of Locked On. The NFL regular season is wrapped up. It's come to a close, but there's still time to get in on the action with the playoffs over at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is super easy to use. I use it myself, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find new bets in the all-new Explore tab and make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays. So the work's done for you. The bets are already made there, and there's so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And the Locked On Podcast Network is making history. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. That's right. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering each and every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Remember, check out happyvalleyinsider.com for more on the recruiting talk. If you liked what Dylan and I have brought you today with this episode previewing Junior Day. So 2025, the 2025 prospects with some of the 2026 prospects in attendance here. Dylan, what is Junior Day like exactly? Because there's the Lash Bash, which I think is the biggest. It is the mecca of Penn State football recruiting events, but that's not too shy away from what Junior Day is. This is almost, I think, more of an introductory period for a lot of players. But how important is it to make the pitch on this kind of day in the middle of January to start a new year?
No, yeah, it is important. Junior Day, offers a chance for a lot of these prospects who may not have seen campus yet to get on campus for the first time in their recruitment, get to meet the coaching staff, the entirety of the coaching staff, personally. Usually when they're talking to these guys, it's usually one-on-one or at least in face-to-face conversation, usually one-on-one. So they'll be able to get on campus, get to meet a lot of the staff, get to see what Penn State is all about from campus, from the facilities, and everything in between. So it gives them a really in-depth look at the program and gives them an idea of what they could expect going forward on future visits or if they end up at Penn State. But yeah, it serves as a great opportunity on the recruiting trail for Penn State, particularly for a lot of these guys that they're going to want to push for extensively over the next few weeks and months. Just a chance to get into their ear, chance to sell them on, hey, this is what we've done over the last few years, this is what we're planning on doing going forward, or these are, the ideas we have for you specifically. James Franklin's going to have a lot of one-on-one discussions with a lot of these guys, and a lot of the positional coaches will as well, of course. But it's a big recruiting opportunity for Penn State and any program really holding a Junior Day, because these visits really kind of set the momentum going forward in our recruitment. A lot of top lists are going to be based off these Junior Days and such, and there will be commitments across the board, across the country that happen.
Yeah.
I know we mentioned that maybe there's not anybody in particular on commitment watch this week, but I would say that if there is anybody, it would be Alex Tash out of Latrobe.
Okay.
Like I said, we have him future cast at Penn State. I think that one is probably more so when, not if, but I've been proven wrong before, but feel really good where Penn State stands with that. And anytime he ends up on campus, I think it's something to watch. But yeah, the very big weekend for Penn State in terms of building momentum here going forward in the 2025 recruiting class. Obviously, they already have a handful of commitments already doing pretty well, but kind of get that ball re-rolling now as they head into late January and into the rest of the year.
Let's go back to the position groups, because you mentioned that linebacker was really strong with all of the top targets for Penn State. And I mean, like, who does this weekend benefit the most? Oh, Penn State football, of course. Obviously, I know that. But I think when I'm looking at this, wide receiver really needs this weekend to go well. And we didn't talk about them so much in the first segment because there's just not that many wide receivers, at least right now in this given moment, recording this on Thursday, January 18th. But only so much can change. It's not like 10 wide receivers are going to magically show up. Point aside, there's only 2 in the current list. Maybe you could add 1 or 2 more, but I feel like this weekend with, as you mentioned, offensive line, we talked about Trent Wilson and company with the defensive line, and then the linebacker spot, which is crucial for Tom Allen taking over as DC and the LB coach. The wide receiver with only a couple recruits on campus. Is there, at some point, Dylan, do we need to sound some sort of alarm? Not necessarily on Marcus Hagans, but just what the blueprint is to figure out, because it's not all on him. James Franklin is responsible. Penn State as a whole, with the way that they recruit, is responsible. I'm just kind of confused. I'm kind of baffled how it went from, I know Juwan Johnson and Irvin Charles didn't exactly live up to expectations, but you were able to land both of them in the same class. And then you had KJ Hamler and Jahan Dotson. And now it feels like Penn State's scraping the barrel just to find somebody to play wide receiver.
Yeah, I wouldn't sound the alarm just yet. Obviously, last year was not what Penn State would have wanted out of the wide receiver room. That's obvious. Really? And I thought Marcus Hagans did a solid job in the 2024 recruiting cycle with the trio of wide receivers they got. Obviously, it's unlikely any of those guys make a huge impact in 2024. I think if anybody's going to, it's Tyzier Denmark, but that's going to be up to, can Tyzier Denmark get up to speed once he gets on campus in June? If he came in this month, I think the chances would be a little bit higher, but I would still say it's probably less likely right now that he does make some sort of notable impact next year. But I still think all three of those guys can develop into quality wide receivers down the road. He obviously picked up Julian Fleming. That's big. They were in on a couple other guys in the transfer portal. It didn't work out. Whether that was, not all the reasons they didn't work out was because of Penn State or Marcus Hagens. Academics are a big part there as well. But yeah, I would also say that this is a big recruiting cycle for Marcus Hagens, a big year for Marcus Hagens in general. The wide receiver room in general has to show improvement from last year, and he needs to show on the recruiting trail that he can land those type of guys that are going to be difference makers in the future. Now, we did add one today to the list in Corey Sims, 4-star recruit, Rivals 250 prospect out of Missouri. He'll be on campus. Now, he's already set official visits to Tennessee and Missouri, so it's going to be hard to get him out of the SEC. But he is going to be on campus this weekend. They also have another 4-star prospect, Rivals 250 prospect, on campus next week in Tez Johnson, a prospect out of Texas. What makes Tez interesting is that Tez and his family is actually originally from the Pittsburgh area, has a lot of friends and family up in the Pittsburgh area still. So perhaps Penn State could get into that race for Johnson. We'll see. This will be his first visit to Penn State. But I know Texas is doing really well in that, and Alabama, I think, was doing well. Don't quote me on Alabama, but I know Texas is definitely up there for Tez Johnson. But they are getting guys on campus slowly but surely. But I will say, this is a cycle that I think Marcus Hagens needs to be able to close on a couple of those at least one of those higher end wide receivers to start replenishing the depth and talent in that room, because I think it's fair to say that what was left for Hagens from Taylor Stubblefield was probably not the deepest wide receiver room that Penn State could have hoped for. There are, I guess, hindsight's 2020, but Taylor Stubblefield's biggest knock on him throughout his coaching career has been his recruiting. And that was, of course, an issue for Penn State in hindsight at that position. It's going to be a big year for Marcus Hagens on the recruiting trail, but also on the field.
Yeah, I think to start right now, he needs this weekend the most, because it seems like Troutwine and Barnes and Allen are already off to a good start in 2024. This is Hagens' weekend to try to make some noise, but. And
I'll also say it's also one of those things where he now has the cards stacked against him, because Penn State can go out there and preach like, hey, we have Andy Koltnicki now, offense coordinator. Look at what he's done at Buffalo, Kansas, Wisconsin, Whitewater. He's this great OC. He's creative. He's all that. He's going to get the ball in your hands. That's great, but until it's shown on the field, it's all talk. And right now, Penn State, they can only really sell what they had on the field last year. And basically, the selling point at this point would probably be, look, our wide receiver room isn't where we'd like it to be right now. You have a chance if you come here to potentially play early. That perhaps is your best selling point if you're Penn State, because otherwise, the offense wasn't exciting last year, to say the least, especially passing the ball. And you really have nothing to sell there. So I'll be interested to see how he does with that kind of that liability right now, because there's just not much to sell on the offensive side of the ball.
And that's why we like having you on this show. Dylan Callaghan-Croley from HappyValleyInsider.com, Penn State Rivals. Like I said, if you want more on this conversation, go to that website, HappyValleyInsider.com. And, of course, keep up with Dylan on X, formerly known as Twitter. Dylan, thank you so much for the time again. Appreciate the Penn State football and recruiting talk today.
Thanks for having me, Zach.
And coming up next, we're going to discuss Penn State men's basketball as they're back on the road against Ohio State with special guest Zane Brancefield. That's coming up next on Locked On Nittany Lions. Today's episode is also brought to you by Gametime. You got to download the Gametime app because buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy all of the tickets for sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. Some of the things that I like about the Gametime app experience, because I've used Gametime myself, you get flash deals on those last-minute tickets. So how about that? Last-minute tickets with discounts. And it's easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. It's all sorted for you. You don't have to do a bunch of digging and a bunch of research to find the best tickets for you for the events near you. And probably the best feature of them all, the image views of the seats. You're not second guessing. You're not wondering what it's going to be like when you show up to the venue. Get accurate pictures of what the view will be like before you get there. Lowest price guaranteed and event cancellation protection. Gametime is the place to get those last second deals on everything. Football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, you name it. So snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download Gametime today and create an account and use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account. Redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We're talking Penn State versus Ohio State Part 2 as the Nittany Lions and Mike Rhodes go out to Columbus to face the Buckeyes in what's going to be a revenge matchup for Ohio State. They lost. They had an 18-point lead, and they blew it in the Bryce Jordan Center. Penn State able to have the comeback. And speaking of comebacks, Zane is back on the show as he returns to help me preview this game. So, Zane, Penn State's going into this one most likely as the spread still hasn't been released at the time of this recording, but Penn State is most likely going to be a double-digit underdog in this case. I know that they beat Ohio State the last time around, but they were down by 18 points, and they were a 5.5-point underdog going into that game. But it still feels like there needs to be more respect for this Penn State team. They're better than people are giving them credit for, and with each and every game, they do get better just because this is simply, I think, the reason that Penn State has struggled at any point, aside from, no, they don't have that superstar type of player. That's supposed to be Ace Baldwin and Kanye Clary. They're very good, but to say the superstar, prolific, right, the game wrecker, the game changer, I feel like everybody complements one another. And that's what I've been so impressed about Mike Rhodes in his first season, is that they are winning with what they have. They are doing and being successful at what talent they have, the types of players, the types of talent they have. So going into this Ohio State game, you're going to see a lot of the same. You're going to see two attacking guards on offense. You're going to see them attack as well on defense, but Penn State is going to give up the easy basket. They're going to play fast. They're going to continue to play fast because that's what's worked to this point. If you go back to that game against Ohio State, where they did win 83-80, a lot of turnovers. Penn State forced double the amount of turnovers against Ohio State. And that was the difference maker because Ohio State led just about every other category, but also something important too. And I'm eager to see this. On the road, they are not shooting as well. They're shooting much better in the Bryce Jordan Center, which is no surprise. That's really, truly the definition of home court advantage. But Penn State has to be wary. If they're going to have another day where they shoot under 30% or around that mark, it's not going to go well. And Ohio State is a good team. Now, I know they're on a bit of a losing streak here, but the Buckeyes are a team that started out 8-2, very competitive. They're at home this time around. And I do think they're the more talented team at this point. But Penn State, the keys for me to Penn State winning this game are going to be, can you force the same amount of turnovers? Because now Ohio State knows your game plan. Now Ohio State knows how you want to operate. And can you shoot? Can you have the same type of clip where you're shooting about at least close to 40% from three-point range? That's a tough ask. And doing it out in Columbus is going to be even tougher.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Penn State does not play great on the road or even just at neutral sites in general. But this Penn State team, they're definitely feeling themselves now after beating Wisconsin the other day. And that's a big win. Ohio State now, like you said, they're a losing streak. They've lost 3 in a row, most recently against Michigan. And Penn State did beat Michigan at the Plushia. So, of that. But the big thing here, I think, is this Ohio State team has been struggling offensively. They're not scoring a ton of points. And Penn State's been putting up close to 80 points the last few games, which is obviously they're playing at home. So it's a lot different when you go to another place, especially a team that wants to get a win on the board. They want to win after blowing a big lead like that to Penn State. But I think this Penn State team can, I think they can definitely make it competitive. Winning is going to be difficult. Obviously, all wins are hard to come by, but they force a lot of turnovers. And when you get that many turnovers, it limits the amount of shots a team takes. And then if you're not taking a lot of shots, you're not going to make very many shots. So I think this Penn State team can make it close. It's going to be, I think the biggest thing would be how well can they do in the paint and how well can they shoot the ball. Their inside game, Kanye-Clary and Ace Baldwin are each going to score 15 points a game. I think that's a given any given night recently.
Yeah.
But rebounding is going to be big. They can't have a game like Wisconsin where Kudus Wahab has 2 rebounds because they're not going to play as big of a bench. And also, you got to keep in mind when Penn State last played Ohio State, Leo O'Boyle was playing really well. He had 16 points. Is he going to do that again? Is the bench going to produce as well? This Penn State bench it's hit or miss. Sometimes they have 10 points, sometimes they have 25. So I think that'll be the biggest thing for Penn State. They have to figure out what's the bench going to do. Can they get rebounds? How many turnovers can they force to limit Ohio State's shots? I don't think it's out of the question if they can win. I think it's in their reach. It's just it's going to be a tough game. It's always tough when a team goes to Columbus anyways.
Well, expect points in this case because I think one of two things are going to happen here. Penn State's either going to win a close one or Ohio State's going to blow them out because I think that Penn State is, again, we keep saying that they get better every single game. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and Penn State continues to get stronger. And maybe that's a little over dramatic saying that. Ohio State has gone backwards. Penn State beats Michigan on a neutral site. And then Ohio State loses to that same Michigan team that has taken a major step backward as a program with Juwan Howard. That's surprising to me. The Buckeyes should not have lost that game to Michigan, but they did. And that's a tough one, right? Anything's a given in this Big Ten conference, right? We just saw Penn State beat a number 11 Wisconsin team. Very talented team. Do I think they have some flaws? Absolutely. But in this case, Penn State is going up against an Ohio State team that has, frankly, they have better athletes. They have more size. So Ohio State's going to out-rebound them and do some other things very well. So that's why I say shooting is key. And I'll give you a key player. It's not Ace Baldwin. It's not Kanye-Clary. It's the emergence of Nick Kern Jr. as a scoring option. I mean, Kern's been really good, and he's probably, him and Ace Baldwin, I would say, are the best defensive players on the team. But Kern, I would say, is all around one of the best because he can guard your point guard. Well, can he guard Zach Edey? No, I'm not going to say that, but he can go up against somebody that is 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", and be able to hold his own. So I think Kern is really valuable in this case going up against Ohio State, where he wasn't exactly the biggest threat or the biggest problem in that game. As you mentioned, it was Leo O'Boyle, and we've seen Leo O'Boyle take a little bit of a step back in his own right. But now Kern has emerged as that third option for Penn State. And I know we've had the conversations about DeMarco Dunn, but if I'm looking for Penn State's big three, it's Kanye-Clary, Ace Baldwin, obviously, and now Nick Kern Jr. And I like it. I've been waiting for Kern to take this next step, and I feel like he has as his role has increased. So that's the difference here. If Kern can continue his trend, I think Penn State wins this one. It'll be high scoring again, but I think Penn State can win this one as long as Kern gets involved the way we've seen him to these past few games.
I agree with you. I definitely think it's all about that involvement too of who can Penn State involve the most because Ohio State knows who to shut down. They know they need to guard Kanye and Ace, but it's surprised they haven't seen Nick Kern Jr. is playing the best offense of his season so far right now. They haven't really seen that much. So if he can come out there and surprise them or somebody else even, I'm not going to be upset about it. And I think Penn State, that'll be Penn State's biggest thing, like you mentioned, is how well can that third option prove to be against Ohio State.
So I think, like I said, this is going to be a fast-paced type of game. I could see both teams going into the 80s, but I don't think Penn State will shoot as well as they did last time. I am going to take Penn State in this one, but it's going to require a little bit more of defense, and I think it's going to be very close. I could see a 2-point game here. I'm going to go 77-75, Penn State. Zane, what are you thinking as far as score prediction goes?
I'm thinking around the same thing, around like a 79-76 final score, somewhere around then. I think it is high scoring too. I agree with you. I think turnover is going to be a lot on both sides of the ball. Said Ohio State wants to win this game too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is a noon tip-off in Columbus on Saturday, January 20th. Penn State is not going to be favored in this one. We'll see if they can pull off another upset of a team that they aren't expected to beat, but like I said, Penn State is due more respect as they will continue to get better. And the Big Ten should be on notice at this point. So Zane, I appreciate you coming back on the show to break this one down with me. Thank you.